Hey everyone, Bob Downey here. We are going to show you guys how to navigate through a lock and dam system today. Right here behind us we've got a lock. We're on the upper Mississippi River, and on a lot of river systems throughout the United States there are lock and dams that create different pools on that river system. On the Mississippi River there's several of them on this upper portion of the river, and they're not necessarily dams that are operated like reservoir dams are. These are put in place to keep the main channel at a certain level for navigation purposes. So there's a lot of barge traffic that comes up and down the river, as well as recreational traffic. And by law, there's got to be a 9-foot channel in the middle of the upper Mississippi River to allow for navigation of those barges. And these lock and dam systems help to keep that water level at that mark throughout the summer months when we have lower water. So we're going to show you guys how we go up and through these and then back down. Locks can be intimidating if you've never done it before, but we're going to show you how to do it. It's pretty simple and easy process. We'll give you some tips along the way, so come on, we're going to lock on through. So a couple quick tips for you guys that are wanting to lock through. Two things in particular. A lot of times you can search for the particular lock and dam on Google and find the phone number. So this happens to be lock and dam number 3 on the upper Mississippi River. If you Google that exact name and phone number, it's going to pull up the number for the Lockmaster. And what's pretty cool on the upper Mississippi is you can call that number and they are very willing to answer the phone and answer any questions you may have. So the questions I typically ask if I'm in a tournament situation or if I'm out fun fishing is, what sort of barge traffic are you expecting that day? You know, are there any barges that are nearby? Are they quite a ways away? And that's going to tell you how fast you're going to be able to get through that lock. If there's a barge that's relatively close to the lock and it's getting ready to lock through, those barges have priority over recreational traffic. So by calling that number, it's going to give you an idea of the availability of that lock at the current time that you want to lock through. You know, a tournament situation, let's say you've locked up and you've got 2 hours left in the day and you want to lock back down. You want to make sure there's no barges in front of you. I'd call plenty early, you know, at least 2 hours early to make sure you can get back through there prior to a barge going in front of you. If there's a barge in the lock, it's usually going to take in that 20 to 45 minute range. If it's a double wide barge, it can take more than an hour. So you really want to be careful in a tournament situation that you don't get locked out and get behind one of those barges. The next tip is with our phones these days and all the apps that are out there, there's a really cool app called Marine Traffic. And you can download it. It's a free app, and it tells you where every single cargo, barge, and ocean-going ship is in the entire world. So you can literally see barges on the Mississippi River or the Red River or the Columbia or whatever river system you're on that has barge traffic or ocean-going ships, the St. Lawrence. You can see exactly where those are in relation to where you're at. And so if there's a barge that's getting close to the lock, or you know that it's on its way to the lock, you might want to pick up, leave your fishing spot, and get to that lock before the barge does so you don't get stuck behind it. So the phone number and the app itself are super key little tips to help you navigate through these locks without getting stuck behind a barge. All right, we're approaching the lock right now, and most locks have 2 walls on them, one on the left side, one on your right, with yellow markers on the end of them. You want to be sure you're coming off plane before you hit those end markers. You don't want to be crashing your wave right into these walls. So once you hit those end markers, get off plane, and you're just going to idle inside the lock wall here. And on the upper Mississippi and most locks in general, there's going to be some sort of rope or pulley system on the long wall side as you approach the lock. Once you get up to that rope, just pull it once, and that's going to notify the Lockmaster that we want to lock through, and then our process will begin. And there's actually a stop sign, or stop light, excuse me, right at the mouth of the lock here. It's flashing red right now, so we're just holding back and we're waiting for that to turn green before we can enter the lock. So we got to stay back. They got to get the lock ready for us to go through. Once it's green, we got the clear to drive in there and get settled in to go up to the next pool. So we've got the locks opening up here. We're about ready to drive in soon, but that stoplight is still flashing red. So you may have a tendency to want to pull in there as soon as these doors open up, but you got to hang tight, wait for that light to turn green, and then we'll slide in there. So got to be patient, let those doors get all the way open, and then they'll let us in. All right, we just got pulled into the lock here. We've got some ropes hanging down on the lock wall. So you can do one of two things when you get in here. They'll let you float out in the middle of the lock if you'd like to do that, or they'll drape these ropes down that you can hang on to, and it'll just hold us in place as the water goes up and down. The one thing you absolutely do not want to do with these ropes is tie off to your boat. The water level is going to fluctuate in here as we go upriver. We're going upriver right now. The water elevation is higher up there, so they'll close the lock and they'll fill up the lock with water. We're already moving a decent amount. And then on the way down, they're going to lower that water and we're going to fall in elevation. So you do not want to tie off these ropes to the boat. Just hang on to them, keep yourself in one place, and wait for that water to go up and down before the gates open. All right guys, we're locking up here. We got the doors opening in front of us, the water levels come up, and we're gonna work our way out. And once again, we got walls on both sides with no wake signs on both sides too. That horn that you just heard is our indication that we can leave the lock. And by law, you're supposed to idle to the end of these walls before you get up on plane. So if your intention is to go left out of the lock, be sure you get past this point and outside the walls before you get up on plane. If your intention is to go left out of the lock, you got to idle all the way down past the end of the wall before you get up on plane. The lock masters don't want you taking off and throwing a big wake into the lock, which over time can cause damage to the lock and dam, and they'd have to repair it. So be cognizant of the wakes that you're throwing on your way out of the lock, and make sure that you're beyond the yellow markers and outside the yellow marker wall before you're getting on plane. And once you do that, you're free to run wherever you go. You just completed locking through a lock and dam system, and you can get on your way. All right, so we went up through the lock and we were by ourselves. No one else was in the lock, so we had the option of either holding the rope or just floating out in the middle by ourselves. Now, rules are such that if there's more than just one boat in the lock, everybody has to be up against the wall and holding a rope. And you've got to hold that rope until we hear the final horn that allows us to be able to exit the lock. So if you're in the lock by yourself, you can float around or hold a rope. If you're in there with other boats, you must be on the wall holding the rope, and be sure that you do hold onto the rope until those doors are fully open and you hear the horn to exit the lock. So just a safety measure when there's multiple boats in the lock at once. All right, we're on our way out. We just locked back down, and the entire process of getting to the lock, pulling on the cord, waiting for it to open, filling up and going through took us about 25 minutes. And so I'd say that's about average. If there's a barge in the lock, you're definitely going to wait longer. And that's where you got to be careful in a tournament situation. If you have a check-in time at 3 o'clock, you want to make sure you're not getting stuck behind a barge. But for the most part, they move you through pretty quick, pretty easy. The lock masters are real easy to work with. They'll tell you what to do if you haven't done it before. Hopefully this video helps you out to be not so intimidated on a river system when you're having to lock through from one pool to the next.